Hi there, it's Pedro. It's the first time that I do something like this, so bear with me. My idea today is to show you. Well, I'm gonna be making a series of videos showing how to use Tuist and what is the value of using a tool like Tuist in your projects. The format is gonna be videos, very short, probably 10 minutes, where I show you different features of Tuist. And I'm gonna start today with a brief introduction of the tool, showing you how to install the tool in your system, and how to create your first project, and even edit them using Xcode as we'll see later. So the first thing that I'm gonna do in this video is installing Tuist. Xcode you should have it installed. So you can go to the website tuist.io. You can go to the docs, and in the getting started section you find instructions to install Tuist. The only thing that you need to do is to copy this and run it in your terminal. I have it installed, so I don't have to do it, but just copy and paste it and it should run very quickly. So let's say the first thing that I want to do is creating a project. This is something that you typically do with Xcode, but in this case you don't need to because we do it for you. So I'm gonna create a new directory where my app is going to be. I call it my app. I cd into the directory, and once there you can do something like Tuist init. So Tuist init will generate an iOS app with two frameworks, as we'll see. After doing that, you can do ls. You can see that you got a bunch of files. I won't go through them now, but we'll see that later or in future videos. So if now I run Tuist focus, you'll see that it tells me that it generated a workspace that contains a project, my app support, my app, and my app kit, and Xcode open automatically. As I said before, I get the app, I get one framework kit that contains everything, like all the business logic of the app, and my app support where I can put utilities, extensions, things that are agnostic to the business domain. If I try to compile the app, it compiles, so that means the project is valid, so I can start working on doing things. So the first thing that you should realize is that if you expand this project, your workspace is comprised by 3 projects that represent the 3 elements, the 3 like the app kit and app support. You can expand them, and you can see that we can observe that all of them have a very similar structure. This is a subtle thing, but I think it's huge when using Xcode at a scale. You can go from project A to project B, and you know what to expect. You know that there is a directory that contains the frameworks. You know that there is a directory project that contains sources and the tests. And you know that inside derive, for example, is the directory where we generate the info.plist files that are set to the targets. You can open each of those projects, and then you see that the list of targets is very similar. Like you see there is a target that represents the framework, and there is another target with the same name with the suffix tests that contains the tests of that framework. At this point you might wonder, where is all of this defined? So let's close Xcode and let's run the following command, Tuist edit. This opens Xcode with a bunch of files that you'll see we call them manifest files. Manifest files are pretty much like the package.swift. It's a place where you define your project. We can see a workspace.swift, which is very similar to the Xcode workspace. It's a place where you define, like it's a way for you to group multiple projects together. Here, as you can see, we say the workspace is called my app, and it contains my app project, my app kit project, and the same for my app support. If we go to each of the projects, you see that the way we define them is having a project.swift file. You can open them and you can see that the structure is very similar. For example, if we're talking about my app kit, we say I have a framework, the name is my app kit, it's a framework for iOS, and these are the dependencies. As you can see, the way we define dependencies is not talking in terms of build phases or build settings, which is what makes dependencies very not user-friendly when it comes to scaling. Here you talk in very plain terms, like I have the dependency with my app support, which is in the project that lives in this directory. As easy as that. Then Tuist will be responsible for translating that into build phases and build settings. Same goes for app, app. It depends on app kit, and app support has dependency with nothing. So if you look at the documentation, you will see that the manifest file that we include there as an example is a bit longer than this one. You might wonder, where is framework defined? Where is app defined? If you pay attention, we have two imports. One is the project description, which is the framework that describes or gives the user all the modules that you can use from your manifests. But we also have this project description helpers. Helpers is a way for the user to extend the models that are given by the project description. It's kind of like an API for you to define your own abstraction on top of the API that we are giving you. On the side, you can see that there is a Tuist directory where there is another directory called helpers. And here is where we define the helpers. You can see that we import project description because we are going to define some extensions on project. And the two extensions that you can see here are the ones that we were calling from the manifest files. One of them is app and the other one is framework. In case of an app, you can see that we are passing an info list. We are setting the short version string and bundled version. And in case of a framework, we don't do that. It's not necessary. And the two of them call this other function called project. And this is where we define what a project means for our project. We say the name, and all of them will have two targets. First target, which represents the sources, and the second target that represents the test. And look at how beautiful this is. We can say the name of that target is going to be the name of this other target with the suffix test. It's going to be a unit test target. This is going to be the bundle ID. Then we don't need to have an info list as many Xcode projects have. You can say I want to use the default one, and then we'll automatically generate the info list for you and set it to the target. When it comes to defining the sources, you can use glob patterns. You can say everything under sources, like all the files under sources, add them as sources of the target. And when it comes to dependencies, as I said before, you define them in very plain terms. You say, I have a dependency with this target, and then you, in this case, is our test depend on the sources target. And since both of them are part of the same project, you don't need to specify the project. You can say, I depend on the target with this name, part of the same project. And thanks to something like this, you can define in your org what a project means. You can define a standard. You can codify what, in your opinion, a project should be like. This is unfortunately something that you cannot do with Xcode. If there's a new team that wants to create a new Xcode project, it's very likely that they won't stay conventional or consistent with the other projects, which in the future you will see that this will introduce many complications. In this case, we have a helper Although you can also call this one template, because in the end, it is what it is. It is a template that behaves as a factory of projects. And this is beautiful. What I'm gonna do before finishing the video is creating a new target, just to show you how easy it is. So let's say I want to create a project. So here I can do, I don't know, I can call this target my UI kit. And here I'm gonna add a new file, project.swift. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this. Actually, since this is going to be a framework, I'm gonna copy the manifest content from another framework. I'm gonna paste it there. I'm gonna call this one my UI kit for iOS dependencies. For now, I'm gonna remove all the dependencies. And in my app, I will say that this one also has a dependency with my UI kit. And the directory is going to be my UI kit. I need to make sure that the manifest file was created in the right directory. I assume it was, but let's double check. If I open this in Finder, I'll see, yeah, right. This is the projects directory with like each folder representing a project, and then there is my UI kit that contains project.swift. So as we saw in the template, let's go back to the template. It expects things in the sources directory and tests directory. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new, like just a dummy file, so that we can generate the project and we can compile the target. I'm gonna do that with Visual Studio Code. So if I open the project with Visual Studio Code, I go to projects, I go to my UI kit, I'm gonna create a new folder, call it sources, another one, call it tests. I'm gonna add a new file here called my UI kit.swift. Sorry, this is test, so my UI kit test.swift. Also import foundation and import xc test. And I'm gonna do the same with the sources target. So my UI kit.swift and import foundation. Let's see what other projects have. They have a playgrounds folder. Let's ignore that for now. Sources, tests, and then the project.swift. So that's it. That's a new project. We don't have to think about dependencies, build settings, or anything like that. Everything is set automatically by Tuist. So I'm gonna close this one and hope that something like this is going to work. So let's see. So I get my project, actually my workspace that contains my UI kit. We can go to the app. We can go to the app target. We can see that the target, the framework was linked properly. We can also go to my app tests and see, for example, that the tests depend on the app, like everything is set up properly. I can try to compile the app to say if everything is fine, and it is. It is also important to double check if we are embedding the framework, because the framework is dynamic. So if it's not embedded, when we try to open the app, it's gonna crash. So if we go to the app, we can see that all the frameworks are marked as embed the framework. So that's awesome. And that's it. So that's how you add and remove frameworks with a project. So in following videos, I will show you more features, things like how to use the scaffolding feature, things like getting the graph of your project and get a visual representation. If you have ideas of things that you would like to see on videos, write me on Twitter. I'm happy to prepare those videos.